I see these 6-year-old kids marching into dogs and fire hoses singing freedom song. I was 16 and I was stupefied by those images. And I see these 6-year-old kids marching into dogs and fire hoses singing freedom songs. And when they see the dogs and the fire hoses, they don't run.
They would pin us to the light pole to keep us from going any further down the street. And you had to hold on to keep from being rolled down the street.
You'd have to describe it as what hell must look like to see human beings being treated that way. Screaming, especially little kids. I've got tears in my eyes right now. It's hard.
These were children with ribbons in their hair, little dresses on, who were getting beaten up. They weren't dressing up in their finest Sunday clothes to get blood all over them just for kicks. They were dressed that way so that they were the maximum amount of sympathetic.
When violence is that visual, it prompts people to action. It gets people's attention in a way that any amount of intellectual discussion can't even approach.
The constant pressure of these stories, the pictures of the police dogs and the fire hoses and the kids being arrested, those were all powerful firecrackers, if you will, on policy in Washington. You start to see the country as a whole saying, this is intolerable. This has got to stop. And that puts the pressure on.
By now, the mainstream press was covering all the horrible things in the movement, and particularly what had happened in Birmingham. And that's an important moment in time because it kind of opens up the door for Lyndon Johnson. It gives him the space needed to pick up the torch from President Kennedy and push through the Civil Rights Act of 1964. In August 1963, King staged his greatest production of all. This time, the drama did not come from images of violence, but from the astonishing sight of 250,000 peaceful protesters from all walks of life descending on the nation's capital.
I have a dream. My 4 little children one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream.
Viewers around the world watched transfixed as a parade of celebrities, black and white, called for unity in the struggle for racial justice.
Mr. Brando, what sort of an impression has this day left with you?
It is possible for all men to come together in a sense of goodwill and to solve problems in a democratic way.
The truth of it is that the March on Washington was what transformed a Southern, predominantly black movement into a national movement. It meant that we were not just an isolated movement.
This movement became a universal movement. There were whites protesting alongside blacks. The news cameras couldn't look away, and ultimately it really changed the evening news as we know of it.
Late today, the federal government...
Nightly news was only 15 minutes during the sit-ins and the Freedom Rides, even the Birmingham crisis. But by the fall of 1963, CBS first went to 30 minutes. NBC Huntley Brinkley went to 30 minutes.
Speed and efficiency in the New York and Washington nerve centers of NBC News. These now make possible the expansion of the famed Huntley Brinkley report to a full half hour.
Television became a bigger presence in people's lives just in time for Freedom Summer and the peak of the Civil Rights era.
The explosion of media attention.
Feel hopeful that we are going to be able to do something, and that something really will come out of the summer.
What areas will your main activities be in?
Primarily, we're working on voter registration, various forms of political education, and then what we call freedom schools.
One of these young leaders was Bob Moses of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC.
SNCC was thinking about how to get their point of view in front of the press. We understood that it didn't matter that black people got killed. We saw that what attracted the media to the whole campaign was the influx of Stanford and Yale.
We've been invited, and we're simply helping people.
The students represent.
And we're simply helping people.
The students representing the elite structures of the country.
I really believe in these things that may sound idealistic, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and I think it's important for everybody to have these.
It was clear at the orientation that the media will latch on to every young little white girl they could find who would be, post the picture back home. That's what the press was interested in. Clearly.
I'm just wondering if people in this room understand, one, that people should be expected to get beaten, they should expect to spend in jail, and it may go beyond someone when they're in jail, then that they should expect possibly somebody to get killed.
I don't believe that one single white person who came there felt that they were being used. People came, they were warned from the outset something terrible may happen to them.
Nick, in your own mind, have you thought about the dangers in Mississippi, that you might come into physical harm? Yes, I certainly have.
As a recruiter, I was asking not only for their name, the address, their parents and everything, what is the newspaper in your hometown? Who should we contact if you get arrested, if something happens to you?
Even if some of us are killed, even if I'm killed, we will have died. Each death is going to bring Mississippi nearer to reconciliation.
I was terrified. Before, during, it was